Hi everyone. Today I'm going to tell you a story when Jesus appeared to his disciples, and it's from John chapter 20, verses 19 to 31. On the evening of that first day of the week, when the disciples were together with the doors locked for the fear of the Jewish leaders, Jesus came and stood among them and said, "Peace be with you." After he said this, he showed them his hands and side. The disciples were overjoyed when they saw the Lord. Again, Jesus said, "Peace be with you. As the Father has sent me, I am sending you." And with that, he breathed on them and said, "Receive the Holy Spirit. For you forgive anyone's sins, their sins are forgiven. If you do not forgive them, they are not forgiven." Now Thomas, one of the 12, was not with the disciples when Jesus came. So the other disciples told him, "We have seen the Lord." But he said to them, "Unless I see the nails on his hands, and put my finger where the nails were, and put my hand into his side, I will not believe." A week later, his disciples were in the house again, and Thomas was with them. Though the doors were locked, Jesus came and stood among them and said, "Peace be with you." Then he said to Thomas, "Put your fingers here, see my hands, reach out your hand and put it into my side. Stop doubting and believe." Thomas said to him, "My Lord, my God." Then Jesus told him, "Because you have seen me, you have believed. Blessed are those who have not seen and yet believe." Jesus performed many other signs in the presence of his disciples, which are not recorded in this book. But these are written that you may believe that Jesus is the Messiah, the Son of God, and that by believing you may have life in his name. What did you think of the story I just read to you? Jesus just walked in through a locked door because his friends were scared and afraid. And the first words that he said to the disciples comforted them. One of the disciples wasn't there, and his name was Thomas. We don't know where Thomas was, but what we do know is when Thomas met with his disciples and they told him that they had seen Jesus, Thomas didn't believe. Sometimes we can be like Thomas. We all need to see things to believe that they are true. Sometimes we believe because others tell us it's true, and sometimes we know it to be true from experiences that we've had. You and I have never seen Jesus with our own eyes. The question I have for you is, will we be a doubter like Thomas, or will we be one of those who Jesus said are blessed because we believe even though we have not seen? We've talked about the beginning of the story that I just read to you, but also in the Bible reading today, there's a message from the person who wrote the book we call John's Gospel. He was probably called John, but we don't know his family name. He had a huge job. He asked people who knew Jesus to tell him what they could remember about what Jesus did and said. And then he tried to write it all down and make it into a book. If you want to pause the video just now, and I want you to think or talk about it with the people you're with just now, what is your favourite book or story? There are thousands of stories. Someone remembered how Jesus had healed people. Someone remembered a story about Jesus at a wedding. Lots of people remembered the stories that Jesus had told them. Some people remembered how Jesus had died. One of the disciples told him how Jesus had come to meet them when they were fishing. John had a problem. There were so many stories that he would not fit into one book. So he did what all the people writing books have to do. He had to choose which stories to put in, and he did. When John had nearly finished his book, he thought that it would be a good idea to tell people what he had done. So he wrote down a sentence in his book that said that Jesus had done so many things that he could not fit them all in one book. But he hoped that the stories he had written down would help his readers to know how much Jesus cared about them and cared for people and how much Jesus loved them. I sometimes wonder about the stories that John had to leave out, but it was so long ago we'll probably never know what they were. If you were making a book about Jesus and you could choose 3 stories to put in, which ones would you choose? I'm going to leave you with an activity to do today. The 3 stories that you've just chosen about Jesus that you've heard, why not create it into a book? And you could give this book to somebody else to read. And you can share with them who Jesus was and the stories that you remember about him. Whatever you are doing for the rest of today, I hope you have a lovely day, and I'll see you again next week for Lighthouse Online.